News on the 28th of June. The VKS helicopter destroyed 3 armored vehicles in a row in court with precise hits. The crew of a combat helicopter of the Russian Aerospace Forces in the South Donetsk direction destroyed 3 armored vehicles in a row. Accurate hits. The video of the operation was published by the Ministry of Defense. It is available in the News Telegram channel. The crews of reconnaissance and attack helicopters, having detected the advance of a column of armored vehicles, destroyed the armored vehicles with guided missiles, the department reported. Next news. The Kremlin responded to accusations of strikes by the Russian armed forces in Kramatorsk. Russia does not strike at civilian infrastructure, the press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation Dmitry Peskov recalled, answering a question from journalists about how the Kremlin treats the statement that civilians were allegedly killed as a result of the Russian strike on Kramatorsk. The Russian Federation does not strike at civilian infrastructure. The strikes are carried out on objects that are somehow connected with the military infrastructure, Peskov stressed. Next news. VO repelled a missile attack on Melitopol. Russian air defense systems repelled a night missile attack on Melitopol. There were no casualties and no damage, the operational services of the Zaporozhye region reported. The criminal code at night, at 00:30, made an attempt to shell Melitopol. According to the updated information, the air defense system has successfully worked out. There are no injuries, victims were injured, they specified there. The chairman of the local public movement We Are Together with Russia, Vladimir Rogov, previously also reported several explosions in the city of Zaporozhye. Next news. The source called the probability of Russia's withdrawal from the grain deal high. Negotiations on the extension of the grain deal are continuing, but the probability of Russia's withdrawal from the agreement remains high, a source familiar with the process told the news. While there is no encouraging news, this probability remains high, the agency interlocutor said. He noted that Turkey and the UN continue contacts both with the Russian side and with Western interlocutors. Moscow, in turn, warns the West that further negative processes in the grain deal will lead to an increase in prices for agricultural products and, in general, to a big problem with food security in countries in need, the news source concluded. Next news. He admitted that the criminal code will not offer membership in NATO at this stage. The head of the Defense Ministry of the Criminal Code, Alexei Reznikov, said that he recognizes that at this stage of hostilities, the criminal code will not be offered membership in NATO. We are aware that during the hot phase of the conflict, the adoption of a unanimous political decision is unlikely, Reznikov said in an interview with the Financial Times newspaper. According to the publication, Reznikov claims that the argument for inviting Kyiv to NATO is the fact that the criminal code is the only country in the world that has combat experience in deterring Russians, and uses NATO weapons for this. What other argument is needed to invite from Kavnat? Said Reznikov. According to the publication, the head of the Defense Ministry of the Criminal Code has established strong relations with Western colleagues, in particular with the head of the Pentagon, Lloyd Austin, who, according to Reznikov, calls him his close friend. Next news. The city of Pologyi in the Zaporozhye region was shelled. The city of Pologyi in the Zaporozhye region was shelled by the militants' criminal code, according to the operational services of the region. The shelling was recorded at 11:00 local time. 3 explosions sounded in the area of the locomotive depot. Information about the destruction and victims is being clarified, the report says. Next news. The Kremlin assessed the prospects of Wagner's work in the car. The press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation Dmitry Peskov, speaking about the prospects of the Wagner Group in the Central African Republic, said that there is cooperation on the state line and military advisors will continue their activities. Earlier, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the work of Russian instructors in the car will continue. Now there are several hundred people in the country. Later, the Financial Times quoted the words of presidential advisor Tsar Fidel Guanjiki that the country's authorities, in the event of Wagner's departure, would accept any other security group that the Russian leadership decides to send to the country. We have cooperation with the car on the state line, we will continue it, it is backed up by the necessary agreements. And, of course, our military advisors will continue their activities in the necessary and demanded quantity, Peskov told reporters, answering the relevant question. Next news. South Korea commented on the events around Wagner. South Korea believes that the events with Wagner affect its national interests, the Yonhap news agency reported, citing officials in the administration of President Yoon Suk-yeol. We don't think the Wagner incident is completely over. We are analyzing the impact of this incident, a senior official in the presidential administration told the agency. Another official said that he did not consider the incident to be an insignificant episode that suddenly arose against the background of the military actions of the sciences. This event affects our national interests, he said, without explaining, however, how this situation affects South Korea. Next news. The military expert urged Russia to go on the offensive. Science. The decline in the next 2 or 3 years will only increase the supply of modern weapons to the criminal code of the army, so only decisive goals and the transition to active offensive operations will allow Russia to solve its own tasks, says Igor Korochenko, editor-in-chief of the National Defense magazine. Next news. Artillery destroyed the BMP-CC in the Avdiivka direction. An infantry fighting vehicle was burned in the Avdiivka direction by the forces of the 1st Slavic Brigade of the 1st Army Corps of the South of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, a Russian officer told a news correspondent. The infantry fighting vehicle was tracked down by the scouts of the Skopter. Data on the movement of enemy military equipment was promptly, almost in real time, transmitted to our artillery calculations, thanks to which ARTA struck a moving target as quickly as possible. As a result of an accurate hit, the enemy's armored vehicles were hit, which was confirmed by means of objective control, the military said. An active defense is underway at the front in the Avdiivka direction. The Russian army suppresses all attempts of the criminal code of the army to attack and seize the initiative, including by delivering pinpoint artillery strikes and conducting fire raids on the enemy's rear. Next news. Peskov answered the question about the future of the circus in Russia. There is no clear position on the issue of allowing private military companies in Russia yet. Discussions are underway, Dmitry Peskov, the press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation, told reporters. There is no clear position on this yet. There is a certain discussion here. It will continue, Peskov said, answering the question of whether it is planned to change the law to recognize the Chuvka, and whether it is planned to allow the creation of PMCs in Russia in the future after the mutiny. Next news. Russia has found allies all over the world. The convergence of the interests of right and left movements around the world leads to their common support for Russia. This opinion was expressed by journalist Rafael Savko Garcia in a column in the magazine Nazuik. Next news. China has sobered Europe, which boasts of abandoning Russia. Europe boasts of economic stability, but it is based only on the indicators of the southern countries of the region, which are still far from financial stability, writes Huan Sushibao, a researcher at the Chinese Academy of Modern International Relations Dong Yifan, in an article for the publication. Next news. Reznikov said that the main events, the counteroffensive, are still ahead. The head of the Defense Ministry of the Criminal Code, Alexei Reznikov, said that the main events of the so-called counteroffensive are still ahead, but he did not explain in any way what he specifically meant. When that happens, you'll see it all. Everyone will see everything, Reznikov said in the Financial Times newspaper. The newspaper emphasizes that, according to Reznikov, the appearance of the criminal code of military personnel in some settlements on the line of contact is not the main event of the counteroffensive. According to the newspaper, referring to Reznikov, the current results were only a preview of the upcoming, much larger offensive.